Hi, I'm Jon Leslie. Let me show you how running your game studio with Favro makes all the difference. To a large extent, the game industry has moved from a project mindset to a product mindset. Games are now enduring products with a much longer life cycle. Live service games in particular have vastly increased the complexity of game development. The need for development teams, QA, live ops, marketing, and studio leadership to be in sync is now critical. There's no more throwing it over the wall. Releases are fast and frequent with many moving parts. Collaborative planning and the simultaneous flow of value across all teams, departments, and levels are necessary to establish a profitable, stable, predictable, and sustainable business model. In this video, I'll show you how a single platform can be used to run all aspects of your studio. I'll also highlight some recent Favro features like capacity limits, Agile Dependencies, the new Relations column, automated status rollups, and enhanced timelines. When you first get started with Favro, it makes sense to map your studio's organizational structure to the platform with collection folders, as you see here in this expandable and collapsible navigation panel. So for example, in the Studio Leadership collection folder, if I open this up, you can see all of the collections necessary for studio leadership to run the business of game development on a day-to-day basis, including the studio dashboard collection. So a collection is just that. It's a collection of roadmaps, maybe Kanban boards, lists of studio initiatives, sometimes referred to as a backlog, everything that a particular level of the organization needs, or a particular team, or an outsourced partner would use to get their job done, all in a single screen collection. Here we have another collection folder representing a particular game currently in development, maybe being run as a live service. If I expand this, you can see this contains all of the team level collections necessary for the development of this particular title, including a producer dashboard, which is an aggregate of the team level collections. Here I have another game production currently in development represented as a folder, and I'm also using collection folders to represent particular disciplines or traditional departments, as you can see here. To create a collection folder, it's as easy as clicking plus and saying new folder. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of team level collections. We'll begin with this Shadow Recon feature team, Team 1. Before we dive into this team level collection, it's important to call out that Favro is made up of 4 core building blocks: the cards, the boards, the collections, and because of the unique nature of the cards in Favro being able to live on multiple boards at the same time, and the boards being able to live in multiple collections simultaneously, it's relations, as you can see here in this backlog, that tie it all together, telling you everywhere a card lives and the status relative to that team or board. You can also see those relations at the top of each and every card. So here, for example, we can see that hand-to-hand, this particular feature, is a child of combat mechanics. It lives in this backlog where it has a status of refined. It also lives on this feature roadmap and is currently tagged to release 1. It's being worked on by the Shadow Recon feature team, Team 1, who currently has it at deployed and live. Marketing is also working on this particular feature, maybe getting it ready for release from a PR standpoint, maybe creating a teaser trailer. Currently in progress. Shadow Recon is also getting this ready for release, and they currently have it at automated testing. So multiple teams working on the same feature simultaneously. So let's take a look at how this works. So here in this feature backlog, say that a new feature comes in. And that new feature is flagged as very high priority. So this team will probably pull this into their next sprint if they're working in sprints. And it's a simple drag and drop like this. So now this new feature card lives in both this team's current sprint board and also back here in their feature backlog, which again might be being worked on by multiple teams at the same time. As you can see here, this backlog is shared across multiple collections. So this card exists both here in the backlog, and if I scroll over to those relations columns again, I'm able to see that yes, indeed, it is in the sprint backlog of this particular dev team. Now, as that moves into doing, that's automatically represented back here in the backlog, again, thanks to relations. Now, say this is done essentially and it's ready for testing, gets pulled into testing. A couple of automations automatically fired off there. So it automatically tagged this as very explicitly in testing. It also said that it's ready for live ops test. And it also automatically added this because it's now ready for live ops to start doing what they need to do to get ready for this feature release. Added it to their board to the first stage selected. We can see that inline on the card here. We can also see this in the live ops status relation column back here in the product backlog. Now, for the sake of example, I've also brought in that live ops teams board to this collection because the boards can live in multiple collections at the same time. You can drag and drop cards manually between these boards, or as you saw in that particular example, it automatically added the card to the live ops team when it reached testing from a development team status. If I turn on relations here, I can see that yes, indeed, the feature team currently has this at testing. And again, thanks to relations inline on the cards on the development team's board, I can see that Shadow Recon Live Ops has this currently at selected. When it moves into scheduled automated testing, the development team can see that again, thanks to relations on the card. Now, say you also want to see this feature on a feature roadmap. Open up your roadmap up here at the top of the collection. You can see this is in a timeline view. And we take that new feature and drag and drop it up to the timeline like this. Now this particular card lives in 4 places. It's on the roadmap, it's on the development team's board, it's on the live ops team's board, and it's also where it originated back here in the product backlog. So if I click on this card here in the product backlog, I can see all the places this particular card lives and the status relative to each one of those boards. So there you have a good example of a team level collection and that team collaborating in real time thanks to automations with other teams, all working in tandem to release, in this case, features to players. Now let's take a look at what an art asset creation team's collection would look like. So again, for Shadow Recon, we'll take a look at the Shadow Recon art team. We can see that they have a shared art asset backlog. They have an art asset roadmap. And they also have an art asset pipeline that has been broken down into multiple swim lanes representing the different asset types. So it's the same concept. When an asset is pulled in to this Kanban board, like so, you can see, thanks to relations, the status of this card as it moves through that art asset pipeline, back here in the backlog. So there you have 2 good examples of team-level collections in Favro. Of course, another essential element of game development is quality assurance. Feature teams and art teams must be in constant communication with QA. Bugs that escape development and embedded QA on teams are tracked in bug backlogs like this one and fed back to the development or art teams that initially worked on the related features or art assets. As you can see, you can create whatever custom fields you need, and you also have the ability to switch your bug database from a sheet view like this one to a Kanban view to visualize those same bugs in your bug workflow. Your QA team may also be working with centralized QA that may currently still be working in maybe Jira. Thanks to Favro's two-way Jira sync, you have the ability to keep this Favro bug database in sync with the central Jira bug database. So an example of this is, say, this PS5 certification bug. We want to make sure that before we sync it to Jira, that it's not a dupe, that it actually is a real bug. As soon as you've verified that this is actually a bug, it's not a duplicate, it could be moved from open to bug verified. You can simply pull it over like this or change the status in the sheet view. Now, as soon as I do that and that bug has been flagged as verified, it automatically synced, as you see there, to Jira. If I open this up, you can see that it provides a link to the bug in Jira. Also, it synced the description, statuses, resolution, and also the members assigned to this particular bug. All of those data elements will be forever synced between the Jira bug and the bug here in Favro. To set up this sync with Jira, it's as simple as creating an automation. And that automation looks like this. When a bug moves from status open to bug verified, we want to send this card to Jira, to this particular server address, to this project, to this issue type. And it's that simple. Now, when it comes to working on the bugs and having these bugs resolved, say a particular bug goes through triage and is assigned to a particular developer to work on it. Now you could take that bug and add that directly to the team's backlog through add or move to. You could also add this bug directly via drag and drop by bringing in that team's current sprint board and maybe pulling it in to their current sprint backlog, like so. By turning on relations here, we can see what team is working on this particular bug and also the current status. So that's just one way to implement quality assurance in Favro. Now let's talk about team capacity planning. Regardless of the team, some level of capacity planning comes into play. Do we have enough capacity in each discipline to meet the scope of work for a particular time period, whether it be a sprint, milestone, or release? Although pure Agile teams can answer this question with velocity or flow-based metrics, many studios still require some level of more traditional capacity and utilization capabilities. So let's take a look at how you set this up in Favro. So here in this capacity and utilization dashboard, you can see we have different time boxes: release, sprint, broken down by person, by discipline, by stage, any way you'd like to slice and dice it. So let's first take a look at by person in a particular sprint. So we can see that each column represents a team member, from Jon to Bella to Jack to Marjorie. And also built in here, we have the capacity limits for each person on this team relative to this sprint. We can see that Jon has 71 hours of capacity. Bella also has 71. Maybe Jack is a shared resource or is out 1 week of this 2-week sprint. He's at 40 hours. And Marjorie can commit 61 hours of capacity to this particular sprint. So as work is assigned to each one of these team members, it's automatically added via automations to their corresponding column. And that work rolls up, whether it's in points or work remaining hours like you see here. This particular board is tied to a work remaining field, which is in the currency of hours. And we can see that we've manually set the capacity for each team member. For Jon, for example, it's 71 hours. So the way this works is work is assigned in the sprint itself on that team scrum board, for example. Maybe this new work item, it is 13 points, 25 hours, and this is assigned to, say, Jon. You can see that it automatically added this work to both the sprint board, capacity board, and also the release capacity board for this particular team, specifically to Jon's column. So if we look at that board, we can see that when this new work came in, 25 hours, that now exceeds the capacity of Jon in this particular sprint of his 71 hours. 91 hours, he's exceeded the 71-hour capacity in this particular sprint. Now, you can also see that it's turned the entire board up here at the top yellow, indicating that although we have not exceeded the overall total capacity for the team of 243 hours, we do have at least one person over allocated on this particular team. And we can, of course, see that when the board is minimized like this too. Open it up and we can see, sure enough, that Jon is 91 hours. He only has 71 hours of capacity. The way this is set is here under Layout, Limits. You can set each team member's capacity for whatever time box that happens to be. It automatically rolls up the total. You can override that total if you choose. You can also enforce that limit if you choose. And it's the same concept for the larger time bucket, the release. Just the capacities are, of course, higher for that longer period of time. So that, in a nutshell, is the best way to handle capacity planning in Favro. Let's move up a level to the entire game production across teams of teams. Producers and directors need to see the big picture. A game dashboard collection provides a single high-level overview of the entire live production, empowering them to drive priorities, set goals, create roadmaps, and track development progress, all from a single screen. There's no need to jump back and forth between team-level collections to find what they're looking for. Again, because boards and backlogs can exist in multiple collections, a game dashboard acts as an aggregation of all development teams and can also include the boards from necessary departments such as marketing and community. If we take a look at this Shadow Recon producer dashboard example, we can see at the top of this collection, maybe they have an overall game roadmap from first playable to early access to their first actual release. And if I open up the left panel, you can see maybe they brought in that feature backlog, which could span across multiple feature teams. And again, because of the ability to track via relations, even across teams of teams, a producer director can see the status across multiple teams for all of their features in a single location. Maybe they've also brought in the art asset backlog where they can see the status of all their art assets, both being worked on by internal teams and maybe being worked on by art outsourcing partners. They've also brought in the live ops backlog to see what live ops is currently working on and the status of their initiatives, community feedback, marketing, so on and so forth. They also might be tracking at a very high level, so maybe they just want to track the progress of epics as opposed to the individual features or user stories. They are able to do that via status rollup automations. And then if they need more detail, they can even bring in the live sprint boards and maybe Kanban boards of continuous flow teams. Like so. What about managing dependencies? So of course in Favro you can manage dependencies within a team, across multiple teams once they've actually started working on features or assets, but it's always much better to catch dependencies early. So for example, if I open up this feature backlog and I switch it to maybe a timeline view, I can see all my features over time. And if I click on this eye icon, I can activate dependencies, like so. Now I can see all of the dependencies in my entire backlog. Say, for example, I wanted to create an additional dependency. Say, peek out of objects couldn't actually finish before take cover behind objects was finished. So I'd simply select peek out of objects, say add dependency, before, and select take cover behind objects. Now I've created a visual agile dependency between these two features. If I click on peek out of objects and open this up and switch over to the dependency tab here, we can see all the before dependencies, and maybe there's also some after dependencies. I can also add dependencies directly from here if I choose to. Now I can see for all my dependencies, I can see what team is working on each one of these. And I can also see the status relative to that team. Most importantly, though, I have the ability to resolve each one of these dependencies with a conversation. So each one of these dependencies gets its own conversation thread, which I can quickly jump back and forth between in the overall comment stream like this. And this can even be done across teams of teams. So say take cover behind objects was dependent on an art asset being worked on by a completely different team. So I could select this, say add dependency, before, navigate to that other team's collection, find the art asset, or at least the block model of that art asset that I want to actually be able to take cover behind, select it, and now I've created a two-way dependency between that feature and this art asset. So if I navigate back to my producer dashboard, I can now see via the stub that take cover behind objects is dependent on this crate. So while we're here, let's talk about automations. Automations can greatly reduce the overhead of recurring tasks. For example, recurring meetings. So if this particular team wanted to create a recurring sprint review meeting from sprint to sprint to sprint, and they wanted to automate that, they'd simply come here to their sprint board, select automations. This brings up the automation gallery. You can see there's many pre-built automations for you to choose from, or you can create one from scratch. We'll go to recurring, and we'll select every time period, create a card. So say we want a sprint review every 2 weeks on Monday. We'd say weekly, Monday, every 2 weeks. Card, we'll use an existing card as a template to create this recurring meeting. Sprint review. And we want that to be added every 2 weeks to that sprint backlog. Save. And there you have it. It's that easy to set up an automation. Now, say you want to be able to share your progress or your roadmaps or this overall producer dashboard with the entire team, or maybe with studio leadership, or maybe even publishing. To do that is as simple as clicking on the collection name, going to Get Shareable Link, and you have three options here, either restricted, just members of this collection, maybe people within your particular organization, which will be domain name authenticated, or it could be simply anyone with the link. So this can be a great way to share, as in this case, an entire collection, maybe with studio leadership instead of a report, because this is a live view into the actual progress of the product. Simply copy link and then share this via maybe Slack, email, Microsoft Teams, etc. Taking it up yet another level, studio and publishing leadership requires the ability to set and drive business initiatives, measure and track the performance of all their live games, and dive down into the details whenever there's an issue requiring their attention. Favro Executive Studio Dashboards make this a one-stop shop reality. For example, in this studio dashboard, maybe at the top we have an overall studio roadmap visualizing our high-level initiatives over time, from maybe achieve game studio agility to our current productions, maybe being run as a live service. We could even drill down into maybe a particular title, Shadow Recon, for example, open this up, say we want more detail, and we could drill down maybe to the Shadow Recon Master Roadmap on this roadmap collection. If we wanted even more detail, maybe first playable, if we click this, it could expand into a Shadow Recon feature roadmap specific to that first playable or early access, or whatever level of granularity you choose. Also, relatively new to the roadmaps is the ability to click this eye icon and see as little or as much information as you choose directly on the cards, even in this timeline view, as you can see here. You also now have the ability to add swim lanes to the timeline view. So maybe I wanted to group this by release. I could create a swim lane for release 1 and maybe another swim lane for release 2, and then drag and drop the features between the two swim lanes like so. Going back up to our studio dashboard, you can see that we maybe also have here an overall sprint release cadence across both of our titles currently being run as live service games. And maybe we have a studio portfolio Kanban being driven by a studio initiatives backlog. So say, for example, we want to see all of our business initiatives, whether they're strategy, development, new IP, technology, even recruitment initiatives, flowing through this portfolio Kanban from selected to review and analysis, in progress, executive review, so on and so forth. Say, for example, you were researching a new IP. This new game discovery could be clicked. Select the card menu, say break down to board, and you could break this down into an existing template or start from scratch. Maybe select the sheet, pull it over here, and start to flesh out maybe a pre-production or discovery backlog for this particular initiative. Once you start to flesh that out, then you could send this through add or move to maybe a pre-production team, like so. Also in this studio level dashboard, maybe you have brought in the specific backlogs for each of the games that you currently have in development. Again, tracking the status of all those features currently in development, not just for a single game, but across multiple titles. Maybe you brought in a community feedback backlog, and maybe you brought in specific roadmaps from each of your games currently in development into this dashboard level collection as well. Studios are even managing their fast-paced recruitment pipelines directly in Favro. As you can see here, if I open this up, visualizing their recruitment pipelines. So Vera, maybe her resume has been selected. She passes the screening call. She passes the team member interviews. Her background check looks okay. She's made an offer. She accepts. She's hired. That automatically, when she moved to hired, automatically through automations, added this card representing Vera to a studio onboarding flow, where she can now go through the onboarding process. So as you can see, a studio dashboard level collection is an excellent place to manage all of your studio level initiatives and the overall business of running a game development studio. Now taking it up even further, say we're a very large organization, maybe with multiple studios, and we need to be able to track not only at the team and the game and the overall studio level, but across multiple studios. Maybe we're a publishing portfolio organization, or maybe we're a central technology team at a program level supporting multiple studios, for example, in this case, a digital platform perspective. So in this digital platform portfolio example collection, you can see that we have a goals and initiatives backlog, and these goals, such as cross-platform gameplay, break down into the supporting initiatives. These initiatives can be flowing through a digital platform initiatives Kanban, like you see here, maybe broken down by studio, taking advantage again of those swim lanes, like you see here, with the ability to switch this from a Kanban view to maybe a roadmap view, like you see here, or maybe even a detailed roadmap view like this one. Now let's specifically focus on this initiative, cross-console gameplay, which originated here and supports the overall goal of cross-platform gameplay. Now this has been broken down into individual feature requests and those feature requests are going to be assigned to teams or maybe specific studios to be worked on. So for example, all of these feature requests supporting this initiative have been assigned to Studio 1. Now Studio 1 has these feature requests currently in progress, as you can see here in this Studio 1 Kanban. And you can also see here in the overall status back in the goals and initiatives backlog for this digital platform team. Now this particular Kanban board, as well as its supporting roadmap, can also live in this Studio 1 specific collection. And maybe this is all this particular studio sees. But the actual digital platform team is going to see all the studios here in aggregate in this essentially portfolio dashboard collection. So these feature requests can actually drive the progress of the overall initiatives. So the way this works is these are completed here at the studio level. You can see that reflected back in the backlog. Now once all the feature requests are done via status rollup automations, this initiative was also completed. And up here on the overall digital platform initiatives Kanban/roadmap, it automatically moved this initiative from in development to ready for beta launch. Now the way that was achieved, very simply, if I look at the automations on this particular board, I'm basically saying when all cards are in status, done, then change the parent card, which would be the initiative, on this particular board from any status also to done, which effectively moved up the chain and moved this particular initiative from in development to beta launch, and also the parent here in the backlog to done. So now you can see how you can scale from the team level to the game level to the studio level to even studios of studios from a digital platform or maybe a publishing portfolio perspective. And finally, Favro can even be used to collaborate with external partners and also to keep a closer connection with your player community. With many studios fostering a player-first mindset as one of their core cultural values, it's imperative to keep players up to date with current and upcoming feature and content releases, as well as upcoming events, competitions, and modes. A Favro public collection is the perfect way to create this real-time player hub. For example, Dauntless, created by Phoenix Labs. If you go to the Dauntless website and navigate to News, Roadmap, this actually takes you to a live Favro public collection. As you can see here, this is how the Dauntless team communicates to their players. What's coming next, bugs and bug fixes, interesting Reddit posts, so on and so forth, all from their live Favro public collection called the Dauntless Community Hub and Roadmap. And this is just one example of how game studios use Favro to build a closer connection to their player community. In summary, games are now live products, requiring continuous development, releases, service, and response to player feedback. With all the moving pieces and the vital need for all studio teams and departments to work together, managing it all with a single app makes sense. Favro is a single collaborative planning platform that any team can use and scales to any size studio or even studios of studios. Favro's core building blocks of cards, boards, collections, and relations, along with recently added capacity limits, Agile Dependencies, relations column, automated status rollups, and enhanced timelines make it the perfect platform for running your entire studio, or even your entire publishing organization. Thanks, and good luck with Favro.